Welcome to the campfire. The night is cool, and the flames are steady. Let them warm your hands. Let them calm your breath. The smoke curls upward into the black sky like whispers from the past. Take a seat, traveler. Let the firelight flicker against your face, and the earth hold your weight. The wind has stilled for now. The trees listen. The stars lean close. You are not alone. Tonight, we walk again into the deep places of the world, into the roots beneath the roots, where no sunlight reaches, where the gods tread not with pride, but with humility. For though they shape the world with their hands, even gods must bow before what they do not yet know. Tonight, our story follows Odin. He has forged the world, named the sky, lifted the heavens, but creation is not knowing, and what is shaped with might may still be hollow inside. Now he must descend, not to conquer, but to seek. Let the fire guide you. Let the story unfold. Chapter 1. The question that would not sleep. Even gods are haunted. Odin stood alone atop a crag of stone, watching the world he had helped shape unfold beneath him. The mountains, hewn from Mimir's bones, stood proud and jagged. The seas, his blood, shifted endlessly against the shores. Above, the sky, held aloft by the great dome of the giant skull, shimmered with stars he had flung into place with his brothers. And yet, Odin felt empty. He did not speak this aloud. Even to Vili and Ve, who had walked beside him through battle and birth, he said nothing. But a silence had grown in him, deeper than Ginnungagap itself. Not a silence of absence, but one of unanswered presence, a constant, pressing question without words. He saw the world. He named its pieces. He watched the realms stretch and branch like veins from the heart of Yggdrasil. But something pulsed beneath it all, something unknown. He had created, but he did not understand. Each night, when the wind died and the stars whispered in unfamiliar patterns, dreams took him. He wandered frost-covered plains and stood upon flaming cliffs. He walked the shadowed roots of the world tree in his sleep, hearing voices that never fully spoke, but always meant. He saw symbols he could not yet read, threads he could not untangle, and always, always, the well. A well beneath the roots, still and deep and dark, and something beside it, a face, a presence, waiting. When he woke, he said nothing, but the question gnawed louder. What good is a world if it is blind? What is a god if he cannot see? Odin left Asgard in silence. He told no one. He wore no crown. He carried no spear. He took only his cloak and his thoughts, and followed the pull beneath his ribs, the one that had no name, but all the weight of purpose. He passed through Midgard, where men had not yet awoken. The rivers whispered in old tongues. The trees bent their limbs as he passed. Birds quieted. Even beasts felt it, the quiet storm that walked in the shape of a man. Days passed, or nights. Time grew thin as he neared the world tree's roots. At last, he stood before Yggdrasil, not as a god returning to his creation, but as a seeker standing before a gate. The great trunk stretched impossibly high, its bark patterned with scars older than thought. Its roots burrowed into realms no map could hold. And beneath those roots, where even shadow had no voice, the well waited. Mimisbrunna, the well of Mimir. Odin's breath caught, not from fear, not from awe, but from recognition. He had been here before, in dreams, in whispers, in some part of him older than his bones. The surface of the well did not ripple, it did not shine, it simply was, still, deep, watching, the kind of water that did not reflect faces, but truths. And beside it, slouched and silent, sat the one called Mimir. His eyes were closed, his head rested against the root behind him. But Odin knew he was not asleep. One did not guard a well of secrets by dreaming. No words passed between them. Not yet. Odin stepped closer. The wind stilled, and deep within him the question stirred again, not louder, but clearer. A thought not of language, but of resolve. He did not come for power. He did not come for glory. He came because he must, because he could not remain blind, and because somewhere, beneath bark and root, beneath water and name, the answer waited, not to be given, but to be earned. Chapter 2. The Path Beneath the Roots. The light thinned as Odin descended. Yggdrasil's roots curled around him like the limbs of a sleeping titan, vast and ancient. The bark, gnarled and knotted, bore marks older than stars, scratches and burns, carved runes half erased by time. Here, the air was thick with silence, not the silence of peace, but of pressure, like standing beneath the weight of thought itself. He moved downward, each step slower, heavier, as if the world resisted him. The glow of the surface faded behind, swallowed by the root-bound gloom. In time, even his breath felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. At last, the path opened. There, cradled between the curling roots and held like a secret, was the well. Mimisbrunna. Its waters shimmered with a light that did not belong to the sun or stars. It was the glow of depth, of meaning, of secrets too vast for words. The surface did not ripple. The water looked still, yet it shifted beneath itself, impossibly deep, like a thought that never ends. And beside it, Mimir. He was not as Odin remembered from dreams. He was older, worn. His form was slouched, his hair like river moss, tangled and damp. One eye was clouded, the other burned like coals under snow. He was bound to the well, not with chains, but with presence. He could not leave, for he was the well, and it was him. Mimir did not speak. He opened his eye and looked at Odin, not with greeting, but recognition. Odin stepped closer. His voice was low. "I have come for wisdom." Mimir tilted his head, as if listening to something deeper than speech. Then he spoke. A single word. "Price." Odin nodded. He had known this would come. Not in thought, but in marrow. Mimir raised his hand, not to gesture, but to mark the truth. He touched his own eye. The meaning was clear. One eye, for sight beyond sight. Odin said nothing. He reached into his cloak and drew a blade, small, plain, clean. He knelt beside the well. He did not hesitate. With a sharp breath, he pressed the blade to his right cheek and carved downward. Pain bloomed, hot and immediate, but he did not cry out. The eye came free, not as flesh, but as something more, a star torn from its sky. He held it in his hand. It pulsed once. Then he dropped it into the well. The water did not splash. It accepted, and the moment it did, Odin saw. Not with eyes, but with the space behind them. Visions flooded him, the branches of fate, the first rune, the weaving of time. He saw a shadow greater than fire, a wolf's eye, burning, a spear breaking the sky, a tree cracking from within. He gasped, and the sound echoed not in air, but in truth. Mimir closed his eye again. Odin rose, one eye gone, but more whole than before. He turned from the well, his vision forever changed, but the weight of what he now knew would not lift. Chapter 3. The Eye That Sees No More. The well accepted his eye, but Odin's ordeal had only begun. He remained kneeling at the edge of Mimir's, the empty socket burning with a pain that seemed to stretch beyond the flesh. It was not a clean wound, not a ritual scar. It was a raw tearing, an intimate surrender. The pain was a living thing crawling up his spine, rattling in his ribs. His breath came ragged. His hand, still wet with blood, trembled above the water's surface. The water did not ripple. It swallowed the eye without sound, without reflection. Yet something moved beneath, an unseen current, a deep recognition. The blood from his face dripped into the well, a thin stream of red that vanished into the depths, and with it, something else poured out of him. Sight, certainty, the quiet arrogance of a god who believed he understood the shape of things. In its place rose visions, not like dreams, not like memory. These were not things shown to him, but things that were. They came all at once, burning behind his remaining eye, clawing at the space where the other had been. He saw the weaving of fate, threads stretching from the roots of Yggdrasil, endless, shifting, crossing and uncrossing. Some bright, some dark, some thicker than storms. He saw the Norns moving among them, shapes at the edge of meaning, their hands pulling, knotting, cutting. He saw his own thread, and the threads of his brothers, twisting toward an end he could not stop. He saw the arc of time, a great circle that was also a spear, hurtling towards something vast. He saw realms rising, falling, burning. He saw wolves chasing the sun, the moon screaming as it fled. He saw chains snapping, spears breaking, a hall of golden shields consumed by fire. He saw himself, alone, standing on a field of ash, a spear in his hand, a wolf's jaws closing. He saw the first whispers of Ragnarok. They were not words, but a shudder that moved through the bones of the cosmos. Not prophecy, but inevitability, like ice cracking on a river. He heard laughter, low and far away. He heard the sound of roots breaking under weight. He smelled smoke that had not yet risen. And then it all blurred. Odin gasped, clutching the edge of the well. His nails dug into the roots, as if they were the only thing anchoring him. The visions pressed harder, like a tide trying to force its way into a vessel too small. His body trembled, his throat closed. He could not tell if the tears on his face were from pain or something far heavier. He did not see all, but he knew enough to tremble. The socket of his missing eye throbbed, a hollow echo of the cosmos. It was not empty. It was full, too full. What he had given up in sight he now felt instead. His body was a tuning fork for the secrets of the world. What he no longer saw, he sensed. The run of rivers, the weight of clouds, the slow tilt of stars. All of it pressed against him, whispering. He staggered back from the well, one hand clutching his cloak, the other still wet with blood. Mimir watched, silent. His one burning eye reflected nothing, gave nothing. He had seen gods come, and he had seen them leave. But Odin lingered at the edge, changed, no longer one who merely sought. He rose, his steps unsteady. The shadows under Yggdrasil shifted around him. The air felt heavier, thicker, as though every breath he drew belonged not to him, but to the knowledge itself. He felt the pull of the roots beneath his feet, felt them stretching into the realms, felt the weight of destiny like a rope around his throat. Alone in the darkness, Odin began to weep, not for pain, not for loss, but for what could never be unlearned. The water of Mimisbrunna remained still. His tears fell into it like a second offering, and in that silence the well whispered back, not in words, but in knowing. It was a soundless echo, telling him what he already understood. He had paid the price. He would pay again. Chapter 4. The Hanging God. The eye was only the beginning. The weight of knowing settled on Odin like a second skin. He returned from Mimir's well walking slowly, as if the space around him had thickened. The roots of Yggdrasil groaned beneath his feet, not in pain, but in welcome. Yet this was not triumph, this was burden. He had looked into the well and glimpsed the deep architecture of existence, the threads of fate, the breaking of gods, the end that waited. His eye was gone, but something darker had replaced it, awareness that could not be silenced. And still, he felt hollow. It was not enough to see. He must become. Odin walked to the base of Yggdrasil. The bark of the world tree shimmered with sap older than time. The wind that passed through its leaves carried no scent, only memory. High above, the sky burned with starlight, but below, beneath the great trunk, only silence reigned. He did not call for witness. He spoke no vow. Instead, he carved the noose himself, from the tendons of a slain beast, looped it over a low-hanging branch, and tied it without hesitation. He offered no prayer. He offered himself to himself, and then, without word or cry, he stepped off the root. The rope snapped tight. His breath stopped. The world vanished. There was no air, no ground, no sound. Only the tree, only the rope, only the god. He hung there, not for show, not for glory, but for truth. For 9 nights and 9 days, Odin swayed in silence. The wind did not touch him. The animals did not gather. No light fell through the leaves above. Only stillness and the slow slipping of time. His body starved, his breath failed, his mind unraveled. He passed through pain, beyond it, into something rawer. He lost memory, lost name, lost the sharp edge of thought. What remained was essence, a flicker of being without boundary. The tree drank from him, and in return, it opened. On the 4th night, he forgot he had ever walked among gods. On the 6th, he no longer remembered what Odin had meant. By the 9th, he was nothing but awareness floating in the dark marrow of existence. And there, beneath words, beyond light, he fell, not downward, inward, through the layers of the world, through the sinews of Yggdrasil, through the molten structure of fate, through the blank space that lies before form. He fell through thought, through shape, through godhood, and then he struck something. Not hard, not soft, but true. A crack formed in the silence, a sliver of meaning, a flash of form, runes, not written, not seen, but known. They were not letters. They were bones of reality, the first thoughts, the final truths. They burned in the void, not as flame, but as certainty. Odin reached, not with hands, but with self, and the runes let him. Not because he was worthy, but because he had paid the full price. Not just his eye, not just his body, but his being. In that moment, he grasped them, and they opened. Power poured into him like winter rivers breaking their dams. He saw how sound became word, how word became law, how names shaped things, how truth could bind, how secrets could cut. And with that knowledge came a terrible awareness. All things end. Even gods, especially gods. Odin gasped, and the rope snapped. He fell again, but this time into breath, into blood, into bone. He struck the roots of Yggdrasil and lay there, broken and whole. His eye gone, his body scarred, his soul now etched with runes. He had died, and something more had risen in his place. Chapter 5. The Runes and the Root of All Things. The runes did not come to him in a flash. They were not shown. They were revealed. As Odin lay beneath the tree, body broken, soul cracked wide open, the world around him slowed, not in motion, but in depth. Everything became clearer, not brighter, not louder, but truer. The bark above him breathed with rhythm. The roots beneath him hummed in quiet pulses. And within that pulse, the runes began to move. They were not marks carved on stone or bone. They were not tools. They were not language. They were being. They circled him like memories. They slid along the air like smoke made of meaning. Each one was an echo and a promise. They were shapes, yes, but more than that, they were the truths behind shape, the logic behind the universe, the first thoughts, still thinking. Odin did not read them. He remembered them. He had never learned them, yet now they opened to him, as if they had always been waiting, and only now had he earned the silence necessary to hear them. Each rune told a story. Each story changed him. He saw Uruz, the rune of strength, not of muscle, but of will, the power to endure when the body fails. He saw Kenaz, the torch that burns in the mind, lighting the path not with fire, but with clarity. He saw Gebo, the gift that must be given freely, or not at all. He saw Ansuz, the breath of the gods, the divine voice that gives shape to chaos. And more. So many more. Runes for fate, for love, for endings, for secrets. Runes that bound, runes that broke, runes that made names, and runes that unmade them. Odin reached for them, and they entered him, not as power, but as burden. He felt them burn into his skin, not with fire, but with truth. They etched into his bones. They coiled behind his eye. They moved through his blood. He became not a keeper of the runes, but the one through whom they moved. He knew how to bind a soul with a name, how to unmake an oath, how to curse with a whisper and call with a silence. He saw how sound became spell, how shape became law, and with every rune came another truth. All power has a cost, for knowledge does not lift the burden, it defines it. He saw his own end. It came not as a scream, but as a stillness, a moment in the far future, when fire would fall and wolves would rise, when his name would shatter on a blade, when the world would burn because it must. Ragnarok. It was not something to be stopped. It was something to be known. The runes whispered not of escape, but of preparation. They did not offer comfort. They offered clarity. And that was enough. When Odin rose, he did not feel strong. He felt bound. He had not claimed the runes. He had been claimed by them. He looked at the world with one eye and saw not just what was, but what held it together. He had become the one who knows. But knowing was not peace. It was purpose. It was weight. It was inevitability. The runes would guide him now, and in time they would destroy him. But before that end, he would shape the world again. Chapter 6. The Whispers of the Norns. When Odin rose from beneath the world tree, he did not rise as a god. He rose as something else, something written. His steps were uneven. The branches of Yggdrasil groaned beneath him, not from burden, but in recognition. He moved slowly, one hand pressed against the trunk, the other resting over the empty space where his eye had been. Wind tangled in his cloak, whispering through the tattered folds like breath through bones. He was alone, and yet not. Somewhere in the hushed space beneath the roots, eyes watched him. Not hostile, not kind, simply aware. The kind of awareness that is older than thought. He paused. There, at the base of a root, twisted into the shape of a cradle, sat 3 women. Or perhaps 3 shadows. Or perhaps 3 truths draped in the shape of women. He could not say. Their faces shimmered with change, as if time passed differently where they sat. One was young, her eyes bright and unblinking. She moved with precision, fingers dancing along a golden thread she spun from the air itself. The second was older, her gaze steady, her hands calloused. She measured and marked each length of thread, nodding at intervals only she understood. The third did not look at the thread at all. She held a blade, not cruel, but certain. And as Odin watched, she cut a strand with such gentleness that the thread simply ceased to exist. They did not speak. They sang, not with words, but with tone. Their song was woven into the bark, hummed beneath the stone, echoed in the hollow places of the well, a low, eternal harmony that shaped silence itself. Odin watched, unmoving. The runes burned in his blood, but even they fell quiet here. The air shimmered around the 3. Their fingers carved shapes into the roots of Yggdrasil, not with tools, but with touch. The runes they wrote were not the ones Odin knew. These were older, deeper. They did not glance at him, yet he knew they had always known he would come. Fate is not only seen, it is written, and these were the writers. Urdr, Verdandi, Skuld, names he would learn later. He did not approach them. He did not dare. He knelt, slowly, with the reverence of one who understands that the closer you stand to truth, the more it demands. The one who spun the thread looked up. Her face was neither smiling nor stern. It simply was. She held the thread in her hand, the color of starlight, fine as spider's silk, and extended it slightly toward him. For a moment, Odin thought it might be his, but it was not. She gave it a twist, and it vanished into the skein. The second woman looked at him. She said nothing, but the weight of her gaze was like a mountain resting on his soul. She knew what he had seen, what he had become. She recognized the runes within him. The third woman met his gaze last. Her blade gleamed, but not with blood. It gleamed with future, and she smiled, just once. Odin lowered his head. The breath he exhaled seemed to ripple through the roots, like wind through water. He rose, slowly, painfully, and turned from them. They would not speak to him, not now, perhaps not ever. But their presence had carved something into him deeper than the runes had. He walked away from the base of the world tree, limping, one-eyed, forever altered, not with peace, but with purpose. As he neared Mimisbrunna one final time, the water was still waiting. Dark, quiet, endless. He knelt again, not to drink, not to ask, to see. He stared into the surface, and the well stared back. For a moment, it was only darkness, the reflection of a one-eyed god bent low, weary and filled with knowing. Then the surface shifted, a ripple, a shape, 2 eyes. not his own. Golden, burning, a wolf's gaze, staring up from the deep, not in hatred, not in challenge, but in inevitability. Fenrir. The end was not yet, but it would come, and Odin now knew it. He stood, turned, and vanished into the mist. The world tree sighed. The well waited. The Norns sang. And now the fire burns low once more. Tell me, traveller, what would you give for truth? Would you trade your comfort for clarity? Would you surrender your sight to see deeper? Odin did. And what did he find in the shadows beneath the roots? Was it power or burden? Was it wisdom or the certainty of doom? What does it mean to offer yourself to yourself? To bleed not from battle, but from longing? Can a god be lonely? Can the one who sees all ever find peace? And what did he see in the well's reflection? His future or ours? The runes whisper still. The thread continues to spool. And somewhere beneath it all, the wolf waits. Rest now, but remember, every answer carries weight, and the ones who know the most often carry the heaviest fate.